about conservation, the Coral Restoration Toolkit, a spectrum of solutions for reef resilience. Okay, let's get them onto the stage. All right, come on up to the stage. We have Silana Williams, Padi, a free dive instructor, Nur Tasha Devi, GaiaOne Restoration, and Naziro Azmi from Reef Check Malaysia. Let's see what they're going to be talking about the corals. Okay, whenever we're ready, they're already in the spotlight.
Hello? Okay.
I believe Dr. Asha should be the moderator, right?
No. Shanae.
Okay, you pass it over that side. All
I
right.
don't think I've got. Oh, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, great.
All right.
Hi everyone. Hi MIDE. Welcome. I'm Shanae Williams. I'm a PADI freedive instructor, and my experience sits at the intersection of freediving and ocean conservation. I have the pleasure this evening of hosting these two incredible individuals, Nortasha Devi, hi Nori, and Nazirul, hi Nazirul.
Hello everyone.
So Nori, as an introduction, is the founder of GaiaOne Restoration, which is a social enterprise that she built after leaving a career in the legal profession in Malaysia, in Kuala Lumpur. And Nori has a passion for the ocean and for sustainability. She's originally from Kota Kinabalu in Sabah, and this program, alongside the scuba diving, funds the coral restoration project. So GaiaOne Restoration is now located in Indonesia. So welcome Nori, and thanks for all the amazing work that you do. Nazirul is from Reef Check Malaysia, and he is responsible for monitoring what's happening in marine protected areas, and he's also overseeing over 300 sites where Reef Check Malaysia is operating, and he's got more than 15 years of experience. So welcome Nazirul, looking forward to hearing what you have to say this evening. So we'll get right into it. Our first question, we often talk about coral restoration as if it's one thing, as if it's something simple. Plant a fragment, grow a coral. It's also gaining a lot of popularity now. So from you, Nori, what can you tell us about what is the single biggest misconception in your experience where coral restoration is concerned?
All right, thank you, Shanae, for that nice introduction. Okay, biggest misconception about coral restoration. I think even before coral restoration, the biggest misconception is that people don't even know what corals are. A lot of the time, even scuba divers, they think that they're just colorful rocks, and they don't realize that it's a living, breathing ecosystem, a foundational species that is home to over 25% of all marine species, that it produces oxygen for the planet. So yeah, I think on that stage, even understanding what corals are, there's already a misconception. And then when it comes to reef restoration, I would say that the biggest misconception is thinking that other people are going to do the work for you, or they're going to restore the reefs, or nothing's going to happen, and then the reefs will live and thrive, and there's no impact on, like, our actions have no impact on them. So yeah, for me, those are the two things. I don't know about Nazirul.
Yeah, so I think the biggest misconception about reef restoration is people think, like what you said, it's all about just planting corals, like we're planting trees, and by just doing it, the reef will be recovering on its own. But it's actually more than that. It's more complex. And I would want to preface this by saying coral reef restoration is not a silver bullet. It will not magically resolve all the problems that we have in our coral reefs and in our ocean ecosystem. So it's beyond that restoration. So basically, even before we do coral restorations, we need to look at what's the issue. What was the issue that caused the declining of our coral reefs? Because at the end of the day, if that issue is not being addressed, so no matter what you do, the reef that you're trying to restore will face the same problems and it may not survive. So to me, these are the biggest misconceptions. Like you need to look beyond just reef restoration. You need to look at the management, that it has to go hand in hand, that coral reef restoration is not a standalone activity, that you have to look at bigger than that. Yeah.
What about root causes? So not just the management of the coral restoration project or projects, what about the root cause of coral deterioration? What are some of the main ones that's wrong?
Yeah, so usually for us, we try to look at the root causes are from like local and global stresses. So local stresses are the things like coming from, unfortunately, from tourism industry, bad divers. Those are some of the local stresses. The global stresses, which is something that we as individual organization may not be able to address it singularly, which is something like climate change. Those are the big thing, like a hot topic nowadays, right? So in terms of the local stresses, for example, tourism industry. So those are the things that we can manage as a small organization, local and individual. You as a divers, you can take actions in better managing your impacts, right? For example, like what you are doing in Bira, right? Try to be a reef positive business. And we as a diver, you can look for these programs like with green fins, like they are dive centers or certified as green fins. So those are the things that we do. With global stresses, it's a little bit tricky because climate change is it's a phenomenon that individual actions may not be able to address it, but we can address it in other questions, and maybe there are other questions that I can tell you what we're doing in trying to fight this climate change.
Thank you so much. We'll move on then to what is in your coral restoration toolkit. What are some of the skills, the materials, the resources that are needed in order to maintain a coral restoration project or hopefully restore a reef back to its original thriving, abundant state?
So with GaiaOne, we actually have a wide and a very versatile approach to our reef restoration. We're not solely fixed on just one technique and one method, and that's the only method that we're going to use. Because the truth is, the reef is a really versatile ecosystem. It has many changes. There's like temperature, there is water movement. Some years are better than other years, and so I think it's really important for us to be able to kind of pivot every time there is a slight change in the situation, and also do our best to pick sites where, based on this technique, it might give the best and most effective results, as opposed to trying to be like, no, this is the only way that we're going to do it, and everyone else's method is terrible, and like, this is the one true method. We're not trying to start a cult, to be honest. We want everyone to know that restoration takes time. It takes a lot of observation. It takes a lot of connection as well with the reef. Like, you really have to understand what the reef that you're restoring or the ecosystem that you're restoring is doing, and paying attention to a lot of that. So yeah.
What are some of the key things that you have as part of Reef Check Malaysia that are kind of like part of your arsenal, your ammunition, or in your toolkit for the coral restoration that you've seen so far?
Okay, so for us, for Reef Check Malaysia, we have actually been doing coral reef restoration since 2010. So that was the first time we did our experiment. So we started off with focusing on doing different design using PVC structure. The reason was because back then PVC was cheap, easily available, lightweight, it's easy to assemble and deploy. So that was in 2009. So over a few years we tried that out, and then we published first publication. documenting our lesson learned, so that in hoping that we could share with everyone. Like what Nori said, there's no one size fit all kind of thing. So we're trying to, and then after that, we found out PVC is actually not a sustainable materials. So we try to do different things. So we try to use like cement block, and then we use metal bars and things like that. So right now, once we've tested it, everything, our opinion, so we have this toolkit that it is available on our website that's documenting all this failures and successes and everything. So this is the most important thing, I think, that you have to embrace your failure, and learn from that. Yeah. So we have the toolkit available on our website that you can see, that outlines the best available method that works for us at our location. And like what Nori said, sometimes the things that work for us at our location may not work elsewhere. So you really have to try it out and test it out. Try it out at your location. There's no one size fits all, basically.
So it's sorry, Nori.
I wanted to add it to that about changing methods. So in Bira, we use about 8 different techniques, and we learn all these techniques from Ocean Gardener. There's the theory and the syllabus. And most of the time, as a base technique, we start with the rope and stick because it's the easiest, it's also the cheapest. It's very easy to train the locals as well. They don't need so much technical knowledge. It's easy for them to identify the kind of corals that will grow well with this technique. But then when we started in Kota Kinabalu and we started using the rope and stick technique, it completely failed. There was too much sediment in the water, there was too much pollution in the water, too much algae, and so by the time, the corals didn't have enough time to grow by the time the algae came and the sponges came, and so we had to completely abandon that method. So sometimes it's like what Naziro said, you have to embrace the failures, and one thing doesn't work in a place doesn't mean that it's gonna always fail. You just have to be a bit more creative and focus on what's most effective.
It sounds like, from what both of you are saying, that one of the biggest benefits of the work that you're doing, or one of the main things as part of your toolkit with regards to restoration, is making sure that your findings are available for others. So that other restoration projects that want to start up, and of course we want as many to start as soon as they can, we have a foundation for them. You've already done the heavy lifting, but there is some kind of reference for other restoration projects. It also sounds like, and having volunteered with GaiaOne myself, I think it's good to see that you make that information available. Again, saying some techniques are going to work for us, others not so much, but also this is what we found, this is what we've learned, and making sure that we can all share in that information is what helps us to move forward. So I think this is really special with what Reef Check Malaysia and what GaiaOne Restoration is doing. So thank you. Moving on from there, you're talking about these things that we have available to us to make sure that the corals are growing. We're trying different growing techniques, different experiments, different materials. We're also planting in diverse locations. Conditions are different. But I guess my next question, and I'm sure everybody else wants to know as well, is when do you decide to pivot? When do you decide to really stick to a specific technique or to a specific species of coral that you're planting? How do you know when to hold on, or if the situation is becoming challenging or the corals aren't responding the way that you need to? When do you know that it's time to pivot to a new technique or try something new or look at a different location?
Okay. Right. So yeah, again, like I said, oceans are very complex and dynamic, changing conditions and things like that. So for example, I think one thing that one experience that we can share is in 2024, if you guys remember that we have this huge, massive bleaching events, right? We lost quite a lot of the restoration area that we have planted, and also in natural reef area. So we lost a lot due to bleaching. So that it was sad, because it represented, the time and investment and the money that we spend, like for example, we have sites that we have tried to restore for 5 years and it's almost 80% gone because of this heat event, right? So we know that, from then, we know that after that event, so we know that we can't just, keep doing what we did, right? Because at the end of the day, we know that our oceans keep warming and warming. So these reefs are not going to be able to withstand it. So part of the things that we do now is still work in the process, that we are working with other researchers. Like for example, there is an organization called Coral Coup in Malaysia. So we're working with them trying to identify, like this heat-tolerant corals that hopefully can become, like a donor to future reef restoration work. Yeah. So that's how you would have to pivot, because otherwise you're gonna be wasting resources if you just keep doing what you're doing now. Yep.
What about you, Nori?
Yeah, so there's a few situations where we had to pivot. For example, we were planting this particular coral, Acropora yonghe. It's a beautiful Acropora with blue tips, and we used to plant them a lot on spiders, and they look great in the wild. But we noticed that after 2 years, the corals will die. There will be this specific sponge-eating coral, and it will just eat up the coral from the base. And we found out from Ocean Gardener that's based in Bali, their corals were doing the same thing. And ever since then, since we know that, okay, they're reacting the same way, we still plant the corals, but we no longer use the spider technique. Now we just do the coral cookies or the ropes, because they just last, like they're more effective. And with regards to the mass bleaching, we also had the same problem. In 2004, I think about 80% of our reefs bleached and only 60% recovered, and even our restoration sites as well. The one thing that we did learn was we noticed there were corals that didn't bleach, or they bleached a little bit and then they recovered. And so right now we focus on planting those corals. The really sad and unfortunate thing is GaiaOne has a big focus on biodiversity. So we use a variety of techniques, because we want to introduce different species, different genus of corals. But when you are forced to, because of climate change, because of how the rising temperatures are reacting with the corals, you're then forced to just focus on these resistant corals or heat-tolerant corals, and eventually we will lose out on the diversity.
Biodiversity.
Yeah, exactly. And those are really hard. They're kind of like the hard truths that we have to accept as a coral project as well. The founder of Ocean Gardener always tells me that coral restoration is a marathon. It's not a sprint. And so when we first started GaiaOne, he told me you need to be able to be sustainable for 10 years. Like your coral project, and there's all these milestones that we have to hit, 6 months, 2 years, 5 years. GaiaOne is in its 5th year now. And so we now need to start branching out and focusing on a wider range of, like, not just restoration, but what you mentioned about monitoring, getting local stakeholders involved, getting the government involved. And so there's many things, and pivoting is just part of the reality, because we can't, based on like what's happening and the impact that humans are giving onto the planet, like the corals don't have enough time to react to that,